Alright, hello English 2 students again. I'm Mr. Maines. Here's a little helpful video for the Jonathan Milton assignment now. So if you find the assignment link in modules, this is not through StudySync at all. So if you go to your modules button, you can scroll down and find the Jonathan Milton assignment here. So it'll have two links in there. The top link is the poem itself. It'll open up in poets.org. And the second link will prompt you to make a copy of the assignment sheet. And this is a kind of worksheet that can be used on any poem. It's a TPCASTT method of analyzing a poem. So before you even look at the poem copy itself, the full 14-line sonnet, you can go ahead and look here at the first row for T, title. So you're going to want to answer each of these questions. I recommend numbering over here. So you'd put a number 1. Here's my answer for number 1. Based on the title, what do you think the poem is about? So you're going to put that there. The title of the poem is, of course, When I Consider How My Light Is Spent. So just like Emily Dickinson, the title is the first line. And then don't forget title and author. So you're going to put the title of the poem as I just read it, and then the poet, John Milton. Okay, so based on the title, what do you think it is? What do you think the poem is about? It's an opinion question. Do your best. So we're going to have a number 1, and then we'll have, let's do this. Then we'll have a number 2. So based on clues given in the title, what do you think the author will focus on? So what is the poem about? And then how will the author address that topic? What will he focus on here? Okay, so once you have number 1 and 2 done, you can hop over to the poem. I recommend doing a side-by-side on your Chromebook. So I know there's a shortcut on Chromebooks. I believe in the Helpful Docs module in your launch, there's like a file that shows this where you can click, I think it's either Control bracket or Shift bracket or something, and you can immediately launch a tab to the right side and another tab to the left side. But I'm just going to do it manually here. So this way you can still have the poem open and your assignment open over here. I know my face is a little bit in the way. We'll just put it in the middle. Bada bang. Let me make this a little smaller for everybody. Okay. So now I have everything open that I need to see. I have my poem and I have my worksheet. Okay. Alright, so like I said, this is a sonnet. It's got a rhyme scheme. I'm going to go ahead and read the poem for you and then just kind of show you all the things you need to answer. Remember, answer every single question so you can get full credit here. Alright, so here's the poem by John Milton, very famous poet. Here we go. When I consider how my light is spent, ere half my days in this dark world and wide, and that one talent which is death to hide, lodged with me useless, though my soul more bent, to serve therewith my Maker and present my true account, lest he returning chide, doth God exact day labor light denied? I fondly ask, but patience to prevent, that murmur soon replies, God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts, who best bear his mild yoke, they serve him best. His state is kingly, thousands at his bidding speed, and post over land and ocean without rest. They also serve who only stand and wait. So remember, poetry is hard because this sonnet has a lot of ideas in it that he could have fleshed out in a full essay of 5 paragraphs or even more. But instead he writes it as a sonnet. So all of the language is compacted and hidden in rhyme schemes and figurative language. So the first thing that you need to do on your worksheet, that is to paraphrase. So you're going to come over here and click on number 1. What is the literal meaning of the poem? Paraphrase the poem in your own words based on the literal meanings of what's on the page. Keep the same sequence and ideas that the author has. You should have the same number of lines as the actual poem. since you're keeping with the true ideas and form of the poet. Okay? So what does that mean? Let's count our lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. It's a 14-line sonnet. That's the structure of the poem. So that means you're going to write a 14-line summary or paraphrase. That's what the prompt is asking you for. So you're going to summarize line 1, summarize line 2. This is, it can be a tedious task, but it will really help you understand the poem. So let's just look at line 1 and help paraphrase it. When I consider how my light is spent. So the author is thinking, or sitting in contemplation, wondering how, or considering how his light is spent. So you can't necessarily spend light like candlelight or like electric light. So this light is standing in as a metaphor for something else. When I consider how my light is spent, knowing what I know about Milton, this actually has multiple meanings, right? And so you can say, instead of light, you could talk about how my life is spent, how his time on earth is spent, but also, for background knowledge, John Milton goes blind in his young middle age, into his 30s and 40s, if I'm recalling correctly. So when he's considering how his life is spent, not only while he's alive, but also while he can fully engage in the world with his vision, that's what he's sitting and contemplating about. So imagine being this very celebrated writer and thinker, and then you begin to go blind. So you can no longer read on your own for yourself. You can no longer write for yourself because you can't see. His greatest known work is something called Paradise Lost. And he dictated that entire work to other writers, his secretaries, to write it down for him, which is pretty incredible that he wrote that while blind. But that's just a little bit of background knowledge. So to give you the ability to do some of this in a more understanding way. So he's considering how his light is spent. Light stands in for something else. I've given you a few different things that you can play with from Milton's life and from the poem itself. Now you're going to go to line 2. Ere half my days in this dark world and wide. So when I consider how my light is spent during half my days in this dark world and wide. Okay? So just like light stood in for multiple things, dark can also stand in for multiple things. Quite literally, he's losing his sight. Or he could be talking about a dark world in a more spiritual way. So go ahead and go through each line and paraphrase. Okay, that's the P part of this assignment. Connotation. Here we go. So you're 1, 2, and 3. Yep. So number 1, identify and explain any poetic devices you found in this poem. Do this by offering meaningful annotations in the margins. Insert comments on the document to annotate. So you don't have a document to annotate. You just have this one poem, okay, opened up in poets.org. So Mrs. Fraser could speak to this more directly on what exactly she wants to see from your annotations, but I would say on number 1, offering some meaningful annotations in the margins, I would simply answer this first clause sentence at least. So identify and explain any poetic devices that you see. If you need a refresher, do a Google search for poetic devices. You know, rhyming couplets, rhyme scheme, there's tons of them. Number 2, connotation is a word that describes how a word is used in context and generally refers to emotion. Based on this, what connotation does each poetic device have in the poem? Tough question. So what you're going to want to do is pick your poetic device and you're going to make a connotation with it. So connotation is, if I hear a word that I'm not sure what it is, like from this poem you might not understand the word, let's see, let's just pick murmur, in case you don't know what a murmur is. So down this line it says, that murmur soon replies, okay? So you might have to use the context of what's going on around that word to understand how the author is using that word here. And then 3, what conclusions can you draw about the meaning of the poem by analyzing the words and connotations? Do your best there. A is for attitude. Okay? Now you've paraphrased, you've taken the poem in literal terms. Now it's time to explore the figurative meaning of the poem. What personality do you see used in the poem? Okay? So what is the attitude that the author is using? We can also say, like, what tone is he taking, right? So what personality do you see taking there? A little bit of an opinion, but it should be an inference. So you have some data to work with, so do your best to make an inference about the author's attitude here. Now, what is the tone of the poem? So tone, in opposition to what mood is, tone is how the author wants you to feel. Okay, mood is how you feel while reading it. So how does the author want you to feel? Okay, so he's taking an attitude, like he has a disposition, then he's using a tone, and then you have a mood based on what that feels like to you. What was going on in the author's life and the world when the poem was written? How might that have influenced this poem? So you might have to do a little bit of research. I've given you some information about this man, John Milton, that he was starting to go blind. Okay, so that impacts a lot of this poem. Shifts. What shifts in mood/tone do you see throughout the poem? Which words signal to you a shift? Okay, so to find a shift in a sonnet, you're going to want to look around like lines 8 and 9 as the poem kind of takes a turn. So as you can see, the last chunk of the poem is this very long quote. The murmur is replying to him. Okay, so we have him talking a minute ago. My true account lest he, God, returning chide. Doth God exact day labor light denied? I fondly ask. And then something replies to him. So if you're looking for a shift, that might be a good place to start. What effect does this shift have on the poem's meaning? Okay, we can go into this in more detail if you need me to. I don't want to make this video too long for everybody explaining everything, but make sure you're answering each of these. So number 3, does the poem begin and end with the same emotions, thoughts, and opinions? So he's beginning with consideration. You know, he's reflecting on his life. Okay, how does it end? With this statement, his state is kingly, thousand at his bidding speed, and post over land and ocean without rest. They also serve who only stand and wait. So he's beginning with a reflection on his own life. The ending is not necessarily directly only about him. Okay, this is about, he's kind of wondering, can I do my godly duty, my Christian duty, my spiritual duty, if I'm blind? And God kind of gives this answer back to him. Who best bear his mild yoke, so a yoke like a burden to serve, they serve him best. That person's state is kingly, thousands at his bidding speed. So it's a message of confidence at the end, and it's a positive message at the end that yes, you can still do good when your body is failing you. Title. Revisit the title. Were you correct in your initial ideas, or has the poem taken on a new meaning? So you don't need to go back and change your answer to number 1. You come down here and just reflect on how you answered it before reading the poem and explain what you learned more about the poem when you engaged with it. Now you have theme, which is the last section. Okay, what is the poem trying to explain to us about the human experience? Are you still human if you go blind? Are you still human if you lose an arm or a leg? Are you still human if you go deaf? Right? I hope you're answering yes, right? So the human experience doesn't end when your body starts to fail. Whatever we have going on inside of us, of our mind, can exist and be prosperous even if our body is failing us, right? So number 2, what are the main themes and subjects of the poem? What have you learned to be true from the author's point of view about these subjects? So you don't have to bring in your own personal worldview here. Just understand that John Milton is a believing Christian in his lifetime, okay? So his worldview is that he needs to be serving his God, okay? So the themes, you should have a kind of an idea of a theme for number 1. And then what's the subjects in the poem? It's him, his life, and kind of wrestling with God about, do I still have purpose even though I'm going blind? 3, what do you think the author wants you to learn from this poem? This poem was for him. He expressed some ideas, but then he gave it to the world. So what does he think you should learn from this poem and his experiences? 4, what else do you want to know about this poem? Opinion question. Put whatever you want. What else do you want to know about this poem, this poet? This is a very interesting man, a good writer. So this worksheet might seem like a lot. Hopefully this video is not too long. Sorry I don't have a lot of noise and engaging buttons and everything to make this a very fun and exciting video for you. I could go in a lot more detail with this poem, a lot more detail with Jonathan Milton, but please do your best. In the future with some of these assignments, as I get to see them more and more, I'll make some PowerPoint slideshows if that's helpful. I'll do whatever you guys need to do to help you understand what's going on, because this is fun to read, at least for me. So poetry's hard. Do your best. You put in the work with the poetry, and you reap the rewards. It's a beautiful way of understanding our language and our human experiences. So thank you guys for watching. Get this in as soon as you can, but do good on the assignment. Take your time with it. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.